Hi. Hello. Hello. Can you guys hear me? Let me know. I just got a new mic. Can you guys hear me? Is this just as good as the other one? No, it sucks. Melly, fix it, or are we good? What is going on? Okay, I'm all over the place. I was trying to get that set up. Can you guys hear me? Yes? Okay, does it sound good and clear? Okay, I want to make sure I sound really, really good on this mic. Yeah. Hi. Way better, extremely crisp. Good. All right. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Hello, hello, hello. I saw Cree Abuelita's Journey. I saw Chuck, Kay, Osane, Dana, Jamie. Amy Truth Wins became a new member. Welcome, Amy. Welcome. We'll be doing, I think, members only content this week. So hey, Mama Silk. Hey, Vanjie. Hey, C Tippy. Hello, hello. Suzanne, Twisted Stitches. Welcome. Okay. Welcome, everyone. All new subscribers, all new viewers. We're back. We're back with the craziness. Yes. Welcome. Thank you for being here. Please make sure you hit the like button. You already know, do all the YouTube things. Really, really helps. Grow my little channel here. So I appreciate all the support. We're reading Mackenzie Shirilla. Okay. Not Shirilla. Mackenzie Shirilla text messages. We are on June 2021. So that's where we left off. That's what I'm gonna read. And you already know I had a long day. Shirilla. I am your coffee queen. Look at how yummy that is. Oh, yeah. You don't even have to, you just come to me, baby. That looks good, huh? Okay, excuse me. That looks bomb. I know I just made it just because I was coming on here. Okay. Let me pull these up. Oh, wait, let me share my screen first. I was about to start. I know it's so good. I think I've perfected my at-home coffee. Why StreamYard doing me like that? Ugh, there we go. Anyways, looks so delicious. Yes, thank you. Okay. You guys can see me, hear me. Let's get started. All right. What did we leave off on? Sometimes I have to refresh. Let me see. Sorry, my computer's being weird right now. Okay, so she had sent him Skims dresses. Up to you. I would just wear tracksuit. I think they were going somewhere because I think they were deciding what to wear. So this is June. Let's see. He says, what are you doing after Polaris at 11:11 a.m.? He says, Dom says, I'm about to come over, babe. Do you have anyone over? Kenzie says, yes, Kendra. You can come still. Dom says, when is she leaving? Kenzie says, I don't know. Soon, probably. Dom says, let me know, babe. I'm going to come over. She says, I'm driving her home right now. Look what I just found on Depop. And she sends a link to like a sweater with like some kind of art on it. He says, what would you want from Wild Fusion, babe? Or do you want something else? White rice and pot stickers? Do you want anything else? Do you want me to come back? Come on, babe, let me know. I'm not going to get this food if you don't want any. Okay, so do you not want me to come, babe? Let me know when you want to talk. I love you, Kenzie. I'm going to come over, babe. Is that okay? Or are you already asleep for Polaris? Oh, this was later in the day. He says, I got to be back at my house till 7:30 tomorrow, though, for my furniture. She says, if you want. Wow, he was blowing her up. He says, okay, coming, give me a sec to run next door and lock my house. How did your test go, babe? Oh, this is the next morning at 10:35. He says, how did your test go, babe? She says, passed. He says, hey, bet, what'd you get? She said, I got an 85. He says, damn, good job, babe. He says, now you're done with school. Now you're done with school too. She says, yes, I have Polaris tomorrow. He says, how do you have that tomorrow? I was going to say celebration night, LOL. She says, I would if I didn't have school. He says, I feel it. She says, I have a facial at 1 today. He said, that's lit. My furniture came. They messed up my table. So I put it back the right way. And now it's still messed up. Kenzie says, what did they do? Dom says, they put the bottom on the top and the top on the bottom. I put it back. Now the bottom is too big. She says, bruh, that's annoying. I don't even fully understand what that means. How do they just effing build it wrong? They should know how to build it. Dom says, want to FaceTime real quick? I'll show you. That was at 11:42 a.m. And then at 2:40, she says, I want Popeyes. He says, that sounds pretty gas. What do you usually get? She says, I don't know. Potatoes, maybe little chicken fingers, a biscuit. I'm on the way home from my facial right now. She says, Dom. He says, what's up? He says, I got the table together good. Still missing screws. I still want to return the couch though. She says, would you get me Popeyes? He says, for one kissy. She says, chicky, biscuit. He says, I don't know what that means. She says, I accept your offer. You might get ripped. Oh, you might get tipped. She did a typo. He says, bet. I was going to say I needed extra kissy. He says, when you coming over, babe? Want to help me find couches on something? She says, babe, I was just going to go home and chill because I just got a facial. I'm driving right now. I would have gone and got it. I'll just go get it probably. I'll help you though. He says, oh, so you don't want Popeyes? I'm confused. You want me to just go? She says, yeah, I did, but I can just go, babe. I didn't know that's what you thought. I feel bad. He says, I thought you just wanted me to buy it and we'd go together. She says, I know. He says, so you mean I just go? She said, yes, but I can just go, babe. I'm going to just drop my mom off, then go. He says, okay, babe. She says, do you want anything? She says, come over. He says, I'm okay, babe. She says, don't forget the Cedar Point money. I'm about to be home, she says. He says, okay, let me see what I got to do. Then I'll come over. She said, well, I was going to get Popeyes. He says, she said, I was going to get Popeyes and he said, get what? She said, food. He said, oh, yeah, I'm not really craving Popeyes anyways. Go to the one in North Olmsted, probably be way better. She says, babe. He says, what? She said, he says, babe. She says, I'm about to go. He says, okay, babe. You go to North Olmsted. She said, probably not. I'm gonna go to the closest. He says, I don't go to that one because the line is super long, probably longer than the probably longer in line than the drive. She says, will it be the same? Someone said black people Popeyes better than white people ones like the food. What the helly? What is she even saying? Can someone tell Mackenzie she's dumb as shit? Oh, oops, sorry, I left that on the screen the whole time. Hey, Ruth. I saw Ruth. Hey, Anton. Hey, Babelets. Yeah, what is her deal? Cree's like, yeah, I don't know. She has issues, literally. How many couches does Dom need? Dude, what the helly? Okay, let's see. I don't even that doesn't even make any sense to me. I don't get what she's trying to say there. Dom says, I'm not sure. I don't get it very much. It depends who working. Kenzie says, I don't know. Dom says, you ain't gonna have Aunt Jemima there. They just being racist, LMAO. Kenzie says, LMAO, I'm a go. Dom says, okay, get me a sandwich, no mayo or pickle, and some fries. Kenzie says, tell me exactly how to say it. Dom says, plain chicken sandwich with fries. Kenzie says, okay. He says, which one did you end up going to? She says, on the way. No. North. He says, when you come back, you want to just come to my place? Right now, I'm waiting on Jared. He's stopping by for something really quick. She says, if you want. He says, yeah, bet. Or if he dips soon enough, I'll meet you at your house. She said, I'm coming. He said, okay, bet. Come to my house. My mom making meatball sub Oh, wait. So then it goes to the next day. That was at 4:16 PM. Then it goes to the 3rd, 7:13 AM. He says, "My mom making meatball sub, then I'll come back." She says, "At Pulp with Morgan." He says, "Lit." She says, "KMS. Are you mad?" He says, "Kind of." She says, "Why?" He says, "Pressure, resentment." What the helly? They just went to like, again, they went from 0 to 100 really quick. She can't even take an effing food order. Dude, yeah, I don't know. Hey, Julie. I don't like how she talks. That's so rude. I know. What the Melly? The receipt is the same no matter which one you go to. Dude, that's why I said, why is she so dummy? She's like, he's like, give me a chicken sandwich. She's like, how do I order that? Dude, this girl is not even for real right now. These are two of the most miserable teens. Okay, let's see. She says, so now he's all upset and it's only 7:35 in the morning. He says, pressure, resentment. She says, the pressure of what? You're feeling guilty? Dom says, ha, no, just pressure and resentment of always trying to be my best. Kenzie says, I'm going to come home around 10:15. Be ready. 10:50. Just kidding. He says, what time do you want to leave by? She says 11:30. Dom says, for sure. He says, I got a couple things at your house. She says, okay, just drive there and get them. Just need to be ready in time. Do you want me to get you on the way home from Polaris or after I change? Because I'm picking Haley and Tyler up too. Dom says, I don't care, whatever's convenient. I just got out of the shower. I just got to dry my clothes, get dressed, and brush my teeth. Kenzie says, all right, get dressed and brush your teeth. I'll get you on the way home. He says, okay. He says, should I wear pants or shorts? Kenzie says, I'm going to wear pants. He says, okay. She says, here. He says, wait, she says, here at 11:04 a.m. And then at 3:29 p.m., he says, where are you going? Why are you leaving? Why did you dip instead of just talking to me? Why aren't you answering? Kenzie says, it's okay. I'm just not going to ride any more ideas for the rest of today. Dom says, why? Kenzie says, because I came here to sit and eat food. Dom says, okay, be mad. That's not going to solve anything. Kenzie says, I'm not mad. I'm just sitting doing nothing because it's so fun. Dom says, well, you can sit and do nothing by me. She says, no. Dom says, okay, well, I'm just going to chill and vape the pen. She says, for sure. Dom says, can I get my card so I can get a drink? Don't I get the cup with the drink? She says, you can get it later. He says, when? She says, later. He says, when is that? She says, later. He says, LOL. He says, I got a headache. She says, I'm ready to leave. He says, why do you want to leave? Because I don't want to go on the swings. Oh, well, where are you at? So we can leave then. Question mark. She says, I'm for real fed up. He says, why? You can talk to me about it. She says, I don't want to. He says, what's that going to do then? She says, well, what's talking to you going to do already? You don't want to change when you make mistakes. You're probably just going to do the same thing in a week or two. Dom says, if you don't tell me what I did, then how am I going to know? Kenzie says, if you don't want to talk to me about it, I'm sorry. Dom says, if you don't want to talk to me about it, how do I fix it? Kenzie says, how the F are we going to walk all the way from the end of the park to the swings just for you to say yes? Then let me walk there alone when we effing get there. He says, I didn't know we were going to the swings. She said, it's my choice if you effing fix it or not. He says, you told me when we were close AF. She says, you did though. He says, I had no idea where we were going. I said, oh, are we going to the swings? Then you said, yeah, and stormed off. She says, I don't care, in caps. You didn't even tell me you were going on the ride. I do not care at all. You're being annoying AF. Dom says, because you were far away. So I just stayed back. Kenzie says, that was the most dumb reply I've ever heard in my whole life. You literally sound like an effing retard. Literally, never text me that gay ass excuse again. Dom says, you were like running away from me. I didn't get the chance to tell you that I didn't want to go on it because you ran away. And you didn't tell me the whole way there. So yeah, that was on the spot. Of course, I'm not going to go on. I'm afraid of heights. Kenzie says, there's something called a voice and it could reach very loud. We playing games. He says, what games? He says, okay, well, next time I'll yell for you. Next time, if we go on a ride super high up like that, make sure I know for sure before we're right by the ride. She said, I'm just not gonna ride any more rides. He says, okay. He says, well, where are you? You want to play the games? We can get the candy apple too. She says, you seriously don't know where the game area is? I literally just told you where I was. He says, arcade or games? She said, how are you confused? I literally said games. He says, okay, let me think. I've been here 3 times. LOL. This is my 3rd time. Is the games by the arcade? She says, bruh. He says, he sends like a picture of something. He says, let me know if you want anything. Oh, a picture of a weed menu, like a weed club, I think. He says, let me know if you want anything. She said, get me dabs. He said, Kenzie says, get me dabs. He said, okay. She says, or a cart. He said, what kind of dabs? She said, any. He said, okay. He says, ones you don't have to refrigerate or ones that you do. Ones you do gonna be a lot danker. She said, any. He said, okay. He said, I got you. He said, what's the plan today, babe? He said, Chris hit me up to chill. Kenzie says, we can do something. He says, what do you want to do? Should I tell Chris I can't chill? She says, I took a nap. He says, what, babe? She said, I took a nap. He said, Chris is over. He's going to chill for a little. Kenzie says, is the fat one with him? Dom says, nope. He says, my bad. Love you, babe. Kenzie says, Lincoln wants me to come get her at 8. Dom says, okay, well, you just want to chill later? He says, is there going to be dudes there? She said, it's that little kid Gavin's party. Dom said, Gavin who? She said, I don't know his last name, but I know it's Lincoln's little friend. It's going to be like 4-wheelers and shit. Dom said, should I just stay here? I got you dabs from the dispo too. They pretty gas. She says, I'm excited. Is the cart at my house? I want to hit it. He said, cart is over here. She says, ah, gay. He says, let me know what's up. Love you, babe. She says, then it jumps to the next day, 6/5 at 4:14 a.m. She says, Nuggy, babe. He says, babe, at 10:28 a.m. He says, what's up, babe? She says, should I have a game night at my house tonight, like a little party? He says, yeah. Kenzie says, I'm just going to invite anyone on my private story. So it could be a party. He says, okay, sounds fun. He says, I just made some good bread today. She said, babe, I'm proud. He says, $500 already. LOL. She says, damn, babe, can you drop off a G for Paige, please? He says, yeah. She says, thanks, babe. I'm about to get here. He says, okay, babe, when do you need it? She says, right now. He says, okay, I'll be home soon. She says, you're coming over tonight, right? He says, yeah, of course, babe. What's the plan? Do you want to get a bottle? Maybe some Don Perignon? She says, we're having a game night. Blair and Mallory want to come. He said, bet. Do you want to get a bottle? She said, sure. He said, bet. Let me see who can get me a bottle. She said, okay, bet. He said, what do you want to get? She said, I don't care, babe. It's up to you. He says, if we get Dom, we can't really let anyone else sip. She says, I know, right? It's gas though. He says, yeah, so what should we do? She says, I don't care about anyone else. LOL. He says, because I got to get it soon. Bet, I'll get Dom. She says, I'm home. You can come. He says, okay, I'm going to get some Dom and Patron. He says, that was at 7:58. And then at 8:40, he says, I couldn't hear you. I'll come in a sec. Got to stop at home. She says, all right, I'm getting tired. He says, what are you doing right now? She says, sitting. He said, no one's over. She said, Lincoln. He said, well, what's the move? Is Blair coming or Mallory? She says, hit him up. He says, I did. Kenzie says, Mallory's not a good person to talk to. So just text Blair. Dom says, he said Mallory would let you know. Kenzie said, well, Mal is slow as shit. Dom said, yeah, I'm going to text Blair in a sec. Kenzie says, she told me she's almost at his house. Dom says, bet, so she's probably coming. Kenzie says, okay, good. Okay, so Mallory's bringing one of her friends. Dom said, yeah, that's what Blair said. Do you think she's going to be chill? Kenzie says, I don't know. Hopefully. Dom says, should I ask Blair? Kenzie says, I don't care. I don't care. Mallory wouldn't just bring some dumb bee to my house. She knows me. Dom says, true. Kenzie says, question mark, question mark. I'm for real tired. What the F? He says, on the way in a sec. Angelo took forever and I had to count money. He said, I'm here. And then it goes to the next day. That was at 9:35 p.m. And then it goes to the next day at 4:25 p.m. She says, Popeye. He says, I know, out of the shower drying off. He says, you want to come over? She says, give me 5. I'm tanning. LOL. He says, okay, bet. I got to get ready anyways. She says, I'm coming though. You want to just scoop me or do you want to take my car? She says, babe. He says, my hair's soaking wet in my face. She said, oh. He says, can you just come drive my car? She says, true. She says, yes. He says, okay, bet. She says, I'm about to come. I'm just cooling down. He says, I got half tank. Bet I got to get dressed and brush my teeth. He says, I keep shaking my hair and blow drying it, but it's still dripping wet. She says, coming. She said, I have your shoes. Not for real. Oh, she said, I have your shoes. That was at 4:37 p.m. Let me see what you guys are saying. Is she lotion tanning? I don't think so. I mentioned you in 3 different chats in the last couple days, Melly. Please don't go members only for any of those texts. Hell no. Who did that? Don't say any names, please. There's only 49 likes. Yeah. Hit the like button or I'm blocking you right now. Just kidding. How's the sound? Good? I'm about to be mad over Melly not sharing her coffee. I'm gonna do a live. I just got a new mic for my phone and I had to set things up. Hell yeah. Oh, you're here. I am here. I caught myself after work saying question mark, question mark. I know. It's okay, Rebecca. Don't even worry about it. She must have got a car recently. I mentioned your channel a bunch as well. Aw, thanks, my babelets. You guys are the best. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I appreciate it. Okay, let's continue. He says, okay, so she said, I have your shoes. That was at 4:37 p.m. Then at 8:36 p.m., she's mad. She says, no, for real, you need to learn when to talk and when not to talk. She says, wrong time. Like, WTF. Dom says, how do you think your mom feels? Kenzie says, okay, I'm ready to not go to this party. Dom says, she's just trying to do something for you. Kenzie says, so are you going to stop or are we not going? Dom says, okay, I'll stop. Kenzie says, you can come up. Question mark, question mark. And then she sends 5 more question marks. He says, wow, you're so cool. He says, your phone was bugging. That's why I didn't hear you. She says, sounds like an attitude to me. He says, you give me attitude every day, every hour of every day. Kenzie says, no, I don't. I don't know what's up with you, but you can either calm down or leave. Like, I don't know what you're trying to do. You're still paying for my nails, right, babe? Wait, what the hell? Okay, so that was at 8:59 p.m. She's all mad. Then it jumps to the next day at 11:13. She says, you're still paying for my nails, right, babe? He says, sure. She said, my appointment's at 2. Are you coming back over before? He says, not sure what I'm gonna do. You wanna just stop by? She said, sure. He said, bet. She said, my dad thing is being weird AF. He says, what is? He says, I'm a shower, doors unlocked, and money is on table. Take what you need, should be enough. Also, Lincoln needs 2 car if you want to do that. She says, I can do that. He says, bet. She says, that's not enough to make change for the 50. He says, that's okay. She said, okay. He says, I'll give you rest later if you want it. She says, I'll give it to you later. LOL. He says, okay, bet. Wow. He's like paying for her nails and stuff. Thank you, Jamie. Yeah, I want to play those. I want to play those calls this week. This is a turning point when she starts being nastier to him than he is to her. I can't believe he was just like paying for all her stuff like that and like let her move in. And then she just killed him like that. Wow. Amy says, poor Don, he was never stingy with money with her, always gave her everything. May he rest in peace. R.I.P. Dom. Even though y'all's were nuts. I don't think Mackenzie truly ever worked for anything in her life. Yo, that kind of pisses me off. She's very ungrateful. He says, on the way to Crocker, what's that? Love you, Nuggie restaurant. He says, love you too, babe. I'll see you later. She says, how much for pre-roll? He said, all three for one, all three 50, one for 20. What? She said two for two. He said two for 40. She said, okay, bet. Three for 50. He said, okay, bet. He says, I'm home, but I'm going to run some other places. She said, oh, he said, is that okay? Are my slides at your house? She says, yes, babe. I'm not sure. I'm in the bathroom. He says, they should be somewhere. He says, just let me know if you can. Wait, what? He says, just let me know if you can. She says, I'll look for them. What are you doing? He says, driving. What's the plan today? She says, I don't know. I'm just laying in bed. He said, for sure. She says, what are you doing? He says, nothing at the crib. Might start whipping edibles or something. She said, I'm at Crocker Park on the way home. He said, what did you do there? She said, I got one shirt. He said, that's what's up. He said, what are you doing? Now you want to do something at 7:45 p.m. She says, I'm getting Wendy's with Faith. She says, I'm down. He says, what should we do? I want to get effed up drunk or something or pop a pill. Um, okay. Dude. Hey, Essie. I know. Whip it real hard. I know. He says, I want to get effed up drunk or something or pop a pill. She says, I don't know. You asked me. Are we just going to sit when we do? He said, it's a team decision. LOL, bet. She says, are we going to do something fun when we do that? I don't want to drink. He says, probably not. So just screw it. She says, we can still hang. He says, what are you trying to do? He says, I might record tonight with Blair. She says, I'll come. He says, okay, babe. At 9:32, he says, you sleep? Question mark. She said, no, I'm straightening Faith's hair right now. Sorry, I've been doing that for a while. He says, oh, okay, you didn't answer. Snap. He says, how could you straighten her hair? Isn't it super curly? She says, I'm driving her home right now. He says, I'm about to go get gas. Kenzie says, I'm about to be home. He says, okay, babe. He says, you gonna come while me and Blair record? It might be a little boring at parts because we're gonna be focused. She says, I'm low-key tired AF, but I want to. I want to hear what you can do though. She says, I'm interested in my little nugget. My music, babe. He says, whatever you want to do, babe. I always want to see you. He says, I'm going to be way more focused on the music though. That's at 10:04 p.m. She says, just after you do your music, come over. We're leaving the door unlocked. He says, no promises because I don't know how late I'll be up over here. She said, well, how late do you think? He says, I don't know for real. Probably doing it till I get tired. She says, are you okay, that was at 10:14 p.m. and then it jumps to the next day 6/9/11/20. She says, are you still at my house? How much did you drink last night? So he ended up drinking with Blair. He says, oh, he says, I left. He says, hella. I don't remember coming over. Oh. She says, bruh. He says, LOL, what? Kenzie says, so you drunk drove to my house last night? Your breath probably still smells like it. It was so strong last night. Dom says, I don't even remember driving to your house. Oh, shite. I'm just here reading the text. So he's out. Yeah. Oh. Is he renting the house? He's got to give her a heads up that he won't be able to give her 100% of his attention. Yeah, because she'll have a freak out. Hey, Mandy. He says, I don't remember driving to your house. He says, I'm going to check my car. He says, my car chilling. She says, OMG. Dom says, come make me food. He says, my stomach hurts. She says, I think I got the job. He says, but no food for me? She sends a TikTok. She says, OMG. She sends more TikToks. She says, literally, let's go right now. I will drive. He says, that house looks sick, but I got shit to do. She says, when are you going to be done? He says, we don't have time to drive there today. Kenzie says, oh. Dom says, I'm like hungover from yesterday too. I haven't even showered. She says, how much did you drink? He says, I don't know, for real. She says, when are you coming over? He says, I don't know. I'm getting gas and I'm going to shower. She says, babe, could you please bring me some bud? I need it. He said, yeah. He says, what are you doing right now at 8:01 p.m.? She says, I'm with Riley at my house. We're smoking. Dom says, I bet you want me to just stop by real quick. Kenzie says, you can if you want to. Please bring me some weed, babe. He says, I'm going to come in a sec. He says, here. He says, come out. She says, come over. Blair and Mallory and Alyssa want to hang. He says, okay, give me a sec. She says, come. Exclamation. He says, hitting the bong, then coming. She says, what are you doing? Oh, that was the end of 6-9. The next day, she says, what are you doing at 10:36 a.m.? He says, on the way to Jared's. She says, I'm taking a math master test. She says, KMS. Haley is here and she's like sitting next to me, but one seat away. It's so weird. Dom says, oh, you at summer school? She def want to be friends. Just be cool with her. What did she do? Kenzie said, she's a follower. She doesn't know how to have her own opinion. Can I get 3 carts when I leave summer school? Dom says, if I'm home. He says, then don't be friends with her. Kenzie says, can I just go get them? Dom says, yeah, it might be unlocked. She says, okay, I'll look. I'm gonna leave around 11:30 to 12. He says, okay, FaceTime me when you're there. She said, okay, babe. At 1:06, she says, wanna swim? He says, where? She says, I don't know. He says, it's not that hot today. She says, I texted Kristen. He said, it's really humid though. He says, we can swim there. Yeah. He said, is it going to rain? She said, look at my Instagram. He sends the weather, screenshot of the weather. He says, okay, babe. He says, who's Jordan? She says, one of my cosmetology girls. He says, okay, bet. Kenzie says, what does your comment mean? He says, I deleted it. She said, why? He said, eat it like cold pizza. I'll comment something else. What does that mean, you guys? Like, eat it like cold pizza. I don't know what that means. Wonder what is in the evidence package. We've been playing all of it. Text messages. Hey, midnight. They're both aren't allowed to drink and no parents say nothing. Dude, their parents are like non-existent sometimes in these texts. Like, we don't hear anything about them for a long time. Okay, so yeah. Okay, let's continue. He says, I'll comment something else. She says, I'll go look. He says, that makes more sense. She said, your comment isn't there. He says, I know, I don't know what to comment. And I don't want to comment something too sexual because your mom's going to see it. She said, my mom is so stupid. Literally can't. We're just going to make it at your house. He says, Blair wanted me to go to the studio anyways. Kenzie says, LMAO, okay. She says, happy pride, Tom. Happy pride, Dom. He says, are you good? Like, do you fight with everyone all the time? No, like, why do you fight with everyone all the time? That's what Dom said. Dom said, who is Vaughn Unguardable? I'm going to tell him off. Are my front toes at your house? She said, I don't know. He said, okay, babe. She said, no, it's okay. Do something. I've been trying to do with you for days without me. It's concerning as F that you're not bringing me to dinner, but whatever. Okay, so wait, let me go check. Let me go back. Oh, 3:15 is when he said, okay, babe. And then it jumps to what? 3:17. She said, no, it's okay. Do something I've been trying to do with you for days without me. It's concerning as F that you're not bringing me to dinner, but whatever. Dom says, it's Smeesha's birthday. It's not a bring your girlfriend thing. It's just us foregoing. Kenzie says, why are you acting like that? I'm not just going to sit there and eat. But whatever, Dom. I don't even care. He says, like, it shouldn't be concerning. Kenzie says, I don't care anymore. Dom says, we go out to dinner every week. She says, of course, you're not getting the effing point. Whatever. Just go eat. I need weed too. I'll pay for it. She said, I need more than just enough for one bowl pack. He says, I barely have any, but okay. She said, I just said I will pay for it. I need it like right now, too. Dom says, yeah, I've been selling shit weed. He says, okay, on the way. She said, okay. She says, and you were about to go on vacation without me, too? Like, what the F? He says, no, I told you I didn't want to leave you. He says, here. He says, if you have any bags you don't like here, could I get it back? She says, Mallory and Blair want to hang. He says, when? She says, tonight. When are you going to dinner? He said, they said 7:30. Probably just be an hour though, so we can chill with them around 9 or something. At 7:47, she says, are you home? He says, why are you mad, babe? She says, don't act like you give an F. Just go effing eat your dinner. He says, why would I not give an F? She says, you're joking, right? He says, no, like, why are you mad? Are you still chilling with us? This is at 11:48 p.m. nighttime. She said, WTF? He said, what? She said, well, I already slept for like 2 hours and you already late as F. So what's the point of even doing it? Like, I'm not even trying to do that anymore. I love how you just took your time. Dom says, I really didn't, babe. Kenzie says, I know Mallory's mad I'm not coming. Dom says, and who cares? Kenzie says, is that all you can ever say? Dom says, you can still have fun. Kenzie says, bruh, no, at this point, I'm going to effing bed. She says, do you think I want to come to your house just to watch you and Blair be annoying as F? He says, okay, babe, good night. Love you. He says, have a good night, babe. Sorry, I was late. Nothing went the right way. She says, nothing ever goes the right way when you're involved. I'm not going to have a good night. I never have a good night anymore. Literally F everyone. Dom says, you decide whether you have a good night or not. She says, I don't need your words of wisdom, buddy. Can you shove it up your ass? Maybe if everyone around me wasn't so effing stupid. So yeah, go party with Blair and Mallory, buddy. I'm sure that's going to be so fun. She says, you guys can just be studio bros and make Mallory sit in the living room the whole time. I'm sure that's going to be so fun for her. Dom says, I'm sorry you feel that way. I wish everyone around you wasn't so terrible. Kenzie says, you're part of the problem. Dom says, sorry you feel that way, babe. There's nothing I can do about how you feel. Because it's how you feel. You decide. Kenzie says, okay, buddy. She says, just invite Lincoln over. You will have so much fun with her. Whoa. He says, LOL, okay. So does Dom like all of his friends? Wait, all of her friends, or does she just think that? Because I know he has cheated on her with some of them before. Hey, Sarah. Sarah Beth. I'm going back to see what you guys were saying. B-Day dinner with 4 guys and she's mad she's not invited. Oh my gosh, she's having a tantrum again. I know, Tiffany. I know, Tiff, babe. So are you Mackenzie? Me? Paid Dom lived next door. Yeah. Paid for her nails and her bud. Dude. This is a result of absent parenting. Their texts are just about food, rugs, and Kenzie being jealous and Dom whining. I know. It's always something. I know. Okay. Um, he says, LOL, okay. She says, yeah, do you really want to be done? He says, it sounds like you want to. I don't give up, but I don't know if you want to. Kenzie says, you're the one who likes the little girls. Wait, what the helly? Why is she saying that? She's that mad? I don't think she ever has to pay for her own bed. Dude. Even if she had what? I know. Hey, Joker. I'm telling you guys, these are wild. All she does is mentally abuse them. They probably would have been so much better if they never met, like the total worst combination. Mallory says she's being dramatic. Dom cheated once while they were on a break. Yeah, I remember he did. Cree's like, she's one of them. Sandy says she's unhinged, says the little effing girl. Addis says Mackenzie's parents should have been parenting, keeping her home more and not allowing her to date at a young age. Okay, let's continue. She says, you're the one that likes little girls. You're the one who cheats on me. I mean, I'm the one with all the trauma from you, says Kenzie. Wow. She says, like, you're literally the reason I have no friends. And stop acting like you're not on your phone. He says, I didn't cheat on you. This is literally at 1 a.m. too. He says, I didn't cheat on you. I didn't even hit on Lincoln. It just sounded like I did. She says, when are you going to realize that you have cheated on me multiple times? And you did. He says, and I said sorry to make you feel better. She says, you're honestly grossing me the F out. What the actual hell? He said, okay, let's just talk tomorrow. She said, no, we're not talking tomorrow or the next day. He said, okay, so what? You're breaking up with me? She says, I don't know. Should I, Dom? He says, you probably don't know what's right deep down. I'll keep trying my best as long as we're together. Kenzie says, I'm going to need you to stop saying you're trying. He says, love you. He says, okay. She says, I'm giving the minimum level of effort is not trying. Giving the minimum. Yeah. She says, you give like below the minimum level and call that trying. It's honestly funny. He says, you can say that all you want, babe. You know I do a lot for you, babe. Kenzie says, just because you do a lot for me doesn't mean you're effing trying. Why the F is everyone so slow? He says, how does that make sense? Kenzie says, bruh, I'm so effing fed up. So fed up. He says, well, whatever you decide, babe, I still love you. She says, I'm sure. Because someone who loves you flirts with a 15-year-old while you're asleep. So Dom was hitting on Lincoln while Kenzie was asleep. Dom at this point is like, what, 17, 18? Wait, no, because he was, oh no, I'm having a brain fart. How old is he here? Like 19? Whoa. And she's 16 or 17, right? Because this is 2021. Am I doing my math right, Melly? No, probably not. It's been a long day. He was flirting with Lincoln. Wow. Okay, let's see. She says, because someone who you love flirts with a 15-year-old while you're asleep. Strange. ... Dom says, hey, 3 years down with you, babe. With all the other girls trying to stop us. I feel like that shows. Kenzie says, WTF? What the F are you even talking about? 3 years don't matter. Dom says, why would I cheat on you with Lincoln? Kenzie says, time doesn't matter. I don't know. You were the weirdo who flirted with her. And with your last choices of BITCH, I wouldn't be surprised. Dom says, if I really wanted to, I could just hit someone up. Like, I'm not that fried. LMAO. She says, you're literally disgusting. You're lucky I just seen this text now. Go ahead and hit someone else up, buddy. Have fun trying to find anyone like me. You really just block me right now? Literally block me right now. He says, okay, good night, babe. He says, I was saying I was going to cheat on you. I was saying, why would I flirt with Lincoln when I could do anything else? Kenzie says, okay, we're done. So effing unreliable. This is at 10:54 a.m. He says, what's going on, babe? Let me know if you need anything, babe. She says, get as much stuff as possible. I need my face cream and face wash too. And my iPad. He says, okay, babe, I will. She said, and my chargers. Literally just shove it in all my mini bags. She says, are you there now? He says, just got here. She says, and we're going to call child services when we're home. Wait, so they're breaking up and she's like, get all my shit out of your house. And now she's threatening to call child services. What? Why? For Toph or for what? Yo, this is getting crazy. Had he found someone else, he would still be alive. Hey, Valerie. Um, Drama queen. He's telling her he could have done more than cheated. What children are involved? Dude, I don't know, but please make sure you hit that like button for your girl. Me, not Kenzie, by the way. She says, and we're going to call child services when we're home. She says, get all my bongs, get all my jars, everything. Dom says, don't do that. She says, we're doing it. He says, send me checklist of what to grab. Kenzie says, that whole family deserves to rot in hell. Dom says, babe, I think this is getting out of hand. She said, bongs, jar, all my clothes, my face wash, my face cream, my eyelash brushes, my eyelash wash. You can put my clothes in baby bags or just shove it in a blanket and hold the blanket like a pouch. Get anything valuable. And I need my iPad and my chargers. Did you get my shit? She says, what the F? He says, yeah, I'm getting it. She says, okay, send me pictures and videos. Did you get it? Question mark, question mark. He says, I'm not done yet. She says, okay. She says, and send me videos. She says, I've just been standing here. Like WTF? Question mark, question mark. She says, bruh, you really annoying me. More question marks. He says, they're not letting me. She says, bruh, what the F? So how are you going to tell me you were getting it if they're not letting you? Bruh, I'm about to freak out. He says, your dad said. Kenzie says, nah, call the cops right now. Wait, what? Wait, is she fighting with Dom or is she fighting with her parents? It sounds like she's fighting with her parents. What the hell is going on here? Her stuff is at her parents. So she's fighting with her parents? And she's like, get all my shit out of there. And he's like, your dad won't let me. And she says, call the cops. Whoa. Okay. I'm sorry, guys. I needed to read a little ahead. So she's fighting with her parents. Oh, shoot. This must be the time when she moves out. CPS. Oh, okay, that makes sense. CPS because of the daycare. Or CPS because maybe her dad tried to like hit her or something. Oh my God. Holy bejeebers. I was like, this isn't making sense. Let me drink. I need some coffee before we continue. Wow, she wanted to call. Yeah, on her mom, I guess. Dude, okay, that's crazy. I'm like, huh? Okay. She says, nah, call the cops. She says, right now. He says, I can't, babe. There's nothing they will do. She said, bruh, call them. She said, that was on 6/12 at 11:45. Dom said, it's your first day at work, babe. Try to focus. Kenzie says, literally just shut up. I don't even know why you thought it was a good idea to text me that. I'm so sick of the no effort. Like WTF. Call the effing cops and get my shit. Dom said, babe, that's not going to work. She said, call the cops and get my shit. Dom said, I ain't talking to the cops. Kenzie says, then we're going to have issues. She said, I'm so done. Literally, just go home. He says, okay, babe. She says, what the actual F is wrong with you? He said, nothing, babe. She said, clearly there's something wrong with you because you're not getting my shit. Go get my shit right now. She says, you really want to break up? She says, we're done. Go F some Parma, BITCHES. You prove my point more and more each day about how effing unreliable you are. Like, we are done. Say bye to 3 years. Dom says, babe, I tried. Babe, be done with me if you want. She said, stop saying you tried. You never do. You gave me the least effort out of anyone you know. How do you just miss over 10 effing phone calls? Wow, she called him 10 times. She's the one who's breaking up with him. Like, dude, he couldn't get your shit. Get over it, Kenzie. And then you're calling him 10 times. Dom says, because my phone wasn't in my pocket. She says, literally stop. Your excuses literally kill my brain cells. Hey, Natasha. Good to see you, love. What a stalker she is. What issues does Mackenzie keep threatening everyone with? I know. I don't think she will be keeping this job for long. No. She says, your excuses literally kill my brain cells. You really couldn't think of anything better to say. He literally so stupid. Dom says, your insults hurt me. I'm done doing anything for you if you're just going to insult me about it. She says, okay, then break up with me. I'll let you know how to do. All you know how to do is give excuses. He says, sorry you feel that way. Kenzie says, with that weak ass reply, we're done. He says, I don't know what's going on with you, babe, but I hope you figure it out and I love you. Kenzie says, no, you don't. What's going on with me is I'm realizing my effing worth. Now you can go F all the bitches you want. I know you've been dying to cheat on me. And of course, you're still dry. You never changed. Dom said, babe, you just got to work through these problems. Whether they're with me or not, I hope you find peace and happiness. She says, working through the problems isn't going to change anything. You have 5 minutes to reply to my snap, or there will never be a chance of us again. That was at 2:16 p.m. And then at 3:23, she says, come get me right now. Question mark. Dude, she's so verbally and mentally abusive and emotionally abusive. And then she goes back to like nothing even happened. And I'm like, are you okay in the head? She says, question mark, question mark. He says, I'm so mad. Wait. She says, can you come get me at 10:18 a.m.? He doesn't respond. And then he says at 10:21, I'm so mad. He says, F your bed. F this phone, took 40 minutes to add a new pin. F yesterday, I missed like 15 sales. My back's effed. You have 5 minutes to reply or we're done. That's what Dom said. Kenzie says, I answered. Dom says, I'm so mad. I just broke my hoop. I can't deal with all of this. Kenzie says, why? This is not my fault. Dom says, it is. Kenzie said, what hoop? He said, too much stress. I'm freaking out. Yesterday's not good. Can't do that to me again ever. Pay for a new backboard on an $1,800 hoop. She said, what the F is wrong with you? So you're going to wake me up this morning by yelling at me. Then you leave all mad. Now you're going to text me like this. Dom says, babe, you threatened to break up with me like 13 times in the past 2 days and called me a R word. Said I had no brain cells. Called me a pedo, a weirdo. Everything in the book. Kenzie says, I said you're making me have no brain cells. Dom said, and I was as nice as possible. Look at the text. And I didn't yell at you this morning. I just said this bed effing hurts my back. I ain't sleeping in it again. I said we were done so many times, like I can't do all this stress again. I just freaked out and threw a baseball bat and it hit the backboard of the nice hoop. And it got shattered. Kenzie said, this is your fault. Dom says, now I have to worry about glass everywhere and can't play b-ball. Kenzie says, I'm not here telling you to break your shit and I'm not escalating the situation. Dom said, that's all I'm saying is chill on me because you're making me freak out. Like, I don't text you saying answer in 5 minutes or there's no chance of us. I don't say I'm losing brain cells to you. I don't tell you to shut up. Disgusting, said Dom. Grossing you out. The list goes on. Said, stop calling me babe, that I like quote unquote little girls, that all your trauma is from me. Stop saying that I'm not trying. When you text me all that mean shit and I just say, I'm sorry you feel that way, babe, or I love you, babe. He said, he sends a screenshot of something. He says, this is how I feel. I'm with you through anything, but you can't talk to me like that. It hurts. And I've been hurt my whole life. The hurting doesn't stop. Answer, babe. Kenzie finally responds and says, and why didn't you say any of this when you were at my house like an hour ago? Dom says, why does it matter? Wrong is wrong. It didn't set me off till then. I had to deal with all this other shit. Of course, that's the first thing you say, like, not like, I'm sorry, thanks for being there for me. He says, answer, babe. She says, I'm still hurt too. Dom says, okay, Kenzie, keep it all about you. Kenzie says, I'm there for you all the time, but whatever. Dom says, it's sad because I told my mom what happened and even she thinks I don't need the stress. It hurts. She says, okay, then dump me. Go talk shit to someone else. He says, wow. She says, I love how you always just have to get your mom involved. Like you don't see me over here telling my mom our business. Dom said, she just seen me break the backboard. What was I supposed to do? Kenzie says, bruh. Dom says, I didn't know what to do. I was ready to freak out. Well, I already was. Then instead of freaking out, I thought I'd tell you how I felt and we could work it out. But you just got defensive. Kenzie says, I thought you had the balls to talk to me about it in person, but I guess not. Dom says, I'm not with you. You want me to come talk to you about this in person right now? She said, you were. Like, you're not with me. Like, what the F? Are you going to freak out in my bedroom or are you going to have a normal conversation? He says, do you want me to come right now? She questions her own message. He said, I don't know if I even want to at this point. I already said how I felt. She says, then don't. Like, what are you going on for then? If you already said how you feel, then why the F are you still talking to me about it? Dom says, why are you still being mean? He emphasizes it. He says, you didn't even say you're sorry or say thank you. I don't talk to you like that, babe. Even before when I was texting you, blowing you up, I was just reciting what you said to me. I didn't call you no names or try to make you sound stupid or anything. Like all I wanted was an apology. Maybe I'll try not to do that. Not okay. Then dump me. He says, answer. She says, maybe you would have gotten an apology if you didn't freak out when you first texted me. I don't think coming onto me crazy as F is going to get you an apology. Dom says, when you come at me crazy, I still apologize. You called me a pedo, a weirdo. I apologized. Kenzie says, you flirted with a 15-year-old. Dom says, not even. Kenzie says, I'm sorry for being manic, but I'm allowed to feel the way I do. He says, me too. She says, you did. You didn't even try to explain yourself. I heard it. Dom said, your words hurt. Kenzie says, your actions hurt. Dom says, you have been so mean to me since before that happened. Your act hasn't changed since that situation. That's not the full problem. And I wouldn't even have asked for an apology if I didn't freak out. I was swallowing everything. Sorry it choked me and I coughed it up today. You've been mean to me since way before then that happened. He says, answer. Answer. He says, don't take 5 minutes just to defend yourself again. Kenzie says, I'm allowed to feel the way that I do. Dom says, me too. I said I was sorry. Kenzie says, I'm going to bed. It's 11:08 in the morning, by the way. She says, I'm going to bed. He says, you don't. He says, still love you. You still didn't say you were sorry for anything either. She says, I love you too. And she emphasized her message where she said, I'm sorry for being manic. I'm allowed to feel the way I do. He said, not what I was looking for, but okay. He said, stuff like yesterday does numbers on me. I was crying for so long and didn't even know why, but I think it's because I don't want you to feel how I do. She says, come tan. He says, give me a sec. I'll be there. He says, actually, I don't know if I'm going to come. She says, why? Come. I'm waiting. She says, okay. He says, I'm taking a shit, then I got places to be. She says, I have a surprise for you. He says, bet. He says, when can I get it, babe? She says, after I eat with my mom. Kristen and Kyle want to hang out. He says, I haven't even ate or showered today. When do they want? I need to plan. She says, I don't know. I'll figure out everything after I eat. He says, okay, babe. He says, what are you getting to eat? She says, Olive Garden. She sends a picture of her stomach. He says, get me something. She says, I'm already getting you something and we're already paying. He said, oh, bet. She says, I have leftovers for you. He said, bet. She said, thanks, babe. Love you. He said, thanks, babe. Love you. She said, love you too. She said, on the way home, come over. He says, I'm 40 minutes away. She says, when you back? He says, okay. She says, Dom says, got a couple more places to go. I'll be free in like an hour. That's at 4:04 p.m. Kenzie says, okay, babe, I'm tanning and I'm going to wash my hair after I tan. He says, okay, babe. She sends some TikToks. She says, this is you when you drink too much. He says, he's plain dead though. Kenzie says, I know, but that's how you look. Dom says, LOL. He says, hey, babe, at 10:57 p.m. Oh, and then there's TikToks. She said, babe. She said, Mallory is asking me to do a group FaceTime call with her and Blair, but I'm tired. Do you want to? And I'm really sad you're not sleeping here with me. He says, babe, I can't do my back like that. I was gonna ask them what bevs they want. Kenzie says, do you want to do a group FaceTime call? She says, I don't know. He says, yeah, I don't care if you want to in like 5 minutes. She says, are you ready? Mallory keeps asking me. He says, 5 more minutes. She says, did you join? I didn't. He says, no, I didn't get a FaceTime call. Kenzie says, tell me when you're ready because I'm going to fall asleep. Dom says, I'm ready. She says, a little too talkative with Mallory. Oh, Kenzie's just like, you guys, I'm starting to think like she really just doesn't want to be with him, but she does it for whatever reasons. Using him, I don't know, weed, like she just treats him so bad and like she's always thinking he's cheating and she's always like, fine, dump me. Like, and he's like, dump me. It's like they don't know how to break up with each other. She has nothing. Amy Truthwin says she has nothing about her. What on earth did Dom ever see in her? Boggles the mind. Yeah, I know, Mandy. They're back to normal. Like nothing even happened. It's freaking sick in the head. It's all about her in the Kenzie universe. Tammy. She's so picky. Uses them for money and weed. Thanks, Moody, for being here. Dom said she was the most beautiful girl at Piggly Wiggly's dumpster. Had he ever at the Piggly Women's dumpster? Had he ever seen it? Was love at first sight? That's hilarious. I think she imagined the flirting. Dude, no, I think she just like doesn't want to be with him. She's like a little too talkative with Mallory, but it's cool. He says, bruh, it's Mallory. She said, I know. She said, I'm also out of weed. This is at 5:58 a.m. I don't know how people deal with this girl. She sends TikToks. Dom says, spot on. She says, me and my babe on the TikTok. Then she sends a screenshot of a snap. Dom says, what, you making a martini or something? She says, a little drink. Do you have a blender? He says, we can buy one. She says, I have to talk to my dad before I'm allowed to leave. He's being a little maniac. This is at 4:28 p.m. Dom says, just tell him you'll be back tomorrow. Kenzie says, of course you have to squeeze in like 85 things and you don't invite me. He says, what do you mean? She says, honestly, annoying AF. Dom says, you're grounded. I didn't know you could come. And yes, because I'm busy. We're going to be late. Okay, I dipped. I'm grabbing the bottles from Sean. Then I'll come back if you answer. Okay, I'm going there. You can meet me or we'll just go to the store after. Why haven't you answered yet, babe? Is everything okay? Kenzie says at 6:41 p.m. If I can't come tonight, the party's not happening. Only if you didn't have that last one stupid ass plan, we could have just went shopping right away. Dom says, why can't you come? She says, are you slow? He says, what stupid ass plan? Kenzie says, I'm not going to answer. You can figure it out yourself. You're so dumb. He says, okay, bye. He says, I guess I'm dumb. She says, I'm for real not about to go. He says, why? She said, and I'm about to just go to a mental hospital. Wow. Is she being dramatic or does she really think she needs it? Because I think she really needs it. Grounded? I guess she got grounded this time. I didn't know that she got grounded. I didn't even think her parents cared about her. I don't know how they're both not exhausted from this constantly. I bet she flirts with other people. You guys want to know something? You know, like when they say like you have a guilty conscience and so like you blame your partner for it, like because you're like, you know what you're doing. You know what I mean? and so, like, you think that your partner is doing it because you're doing it? That's like, I don't know, like, is Kenzie snapping other boys and stuff, like, behind his back and doing, she was doing, like, promo stuff and, like, pictures and all that stuff, so I'm thinking, like, was she involved with other people too? Mental hospital isn't trained for her. Mental hospital is the say, says Nicole. Okay, let's continue. She says, and Imma just go to the mental hospital tomorrow. He says, why? She says, Dom says, are you fighting with them again? Babe, what's going on? Kenzie sends a screenshot of something. She says, go to the store. Get all of that. Dom says, do you want me to pick you up? Kenzie says, no. Dom says, why not, babe? Do you want to go to dinner for Bradbury's B-Day? I might not go. Kenzie says, bruh, do you not know we're having a party at 9? Dom says, they said they're coming at 9:45, 10, babe. Dinner is at 8. Kenzie says, Mallory just told me 9. Dom says, okay, well, I guess I'll go to the store. Kenzie says, I'll go. Mallory's slow. Where are we eating? Question mark, question mark. More question marks. He said, Square 22, probably. Should I come get you? We could go to the store real quick then. She says, yes. She said, come. Bring cart. He said, okay, bet. Dinner is at 8, so we have to go ASAP. I'm gonna pick you up first. We're gonna check my house, see if we got anything we need, then we'll go to dinner. He says, here. That was at 7:32 p.m. And then at 11:40, she says, I'm leaving. He says, why? Kenzie says, the F you mean why? Dom says, bruh, come have fun. Kenzie says, it's okay. You can laugh with them and play twerk music. Dom said, I said no. I didn't want to play that. Kenzie says, hi, Blair. Want to keep showing him? Dom says, I'm not showing him shit. Kenzie says, yup, step to the side. Dom says, I didn't show him anything. Kenzie said, seen that. Dom says, I stepped here so you can see. I'm not showing him. Kenzie says, okay. Dom says, okay, so what you want me to do, not talk to them at all? Kenzie says, no, I don't want you too close to them or laughing at everything they say. And you just showed Blair because Mallory told me. Dom says, why are you still mad? Kenzie said, because my night is ruined. Dom said, why? Because I laughed? Kenzie said, and I argued with my fam just to sit here and do nothing. Dom says, get turned then. Like, I haven't been able to have fun at all, too. Kenzie says, what the F is even funny about that? Weird AF. Dom says, Blair was dogging that 𝐵𝐸𝐶H girlfriend because he don't got a car. Oh, 𝐵𝐸𝐶H boyfriend because he don't got a car. Do you care if I dip? Your mom and Danny sleeping down there. Dom says, I'm not sleeping here anymore. You say you hate your house, but you always want to sleep there. I got no, okay, that was at, wait, let's go back. So at 1 a.m, he says, he says that comment about the boyfriend. Blair was dogging that 𝐵𝐸𝐶H boyfriend because he don't got a car. And then it jumps to 11:40 in the morning. He says, do you care if I dip? Your mom and Danny sleeping down there. I'm not sleeping there anymore. You say you hate your house, but you always want to sleep there. Dom says, I got no sleep at all. I'm so effed. My back is effed. Of course, I got to go get my charger. Sorry, babe. I couldn't stay. I got frustrated. Kenzie says, you left a whole backwood in my kitchen and my house reeks. LOL. Dom says, oh, true. I'll get it. Kenzie says, I was going to ask you if I can smoke it. It's okay if you want it. I just need more weed then because I'm going to smoke with Karina today. Dom says, I don't have weed. Have Karina get her own weed. What about 3 ounces of shake that's laying around your room? She can smoke that. Kenzie says, okay, cool. Dom says, are you mad? Kenzie says, no, just confused why you're still being mean to me. Dom says, how is that being mean? I've been getting called R word, RETARD for 2 weeks. I'm honestly more offended when I haven't had bud for weeks and you think you can smoke my personal smoke with Karina and you let Kendra smoke my shake for weeks. Kenzie says, I always offer to pay. You hold that against me, LMAO. Dom says, Kenzie, I don't have bud to sell. That nug I gave you is my smoke. And that bag of shake you didn't ask to pay for. And you just let her smoke it for weeks. Then said it's a shake bag that Kendra smokes. Kenzie says, I'm done with this conversation. Dom said, why? Kenzie says, why are you always trying to fight? Dom says, I'll come grab my shake then. Kenzie says, Kendra only smoked out of that bag like 5 times. Okay, get it. Dom says, you're always trying to fight. Kenzie says, okay, come then. The F, acting like I care. Dom says, okay, bet. Have Kendra pay for the shake. Because that was over two sips, like 300. Kendra said, she didn't smoke a lot of it, Dom. Kenzie says she didn't smoke a lot of it, Dom. You're acting like I just let her. What the F is happening right now? Like I thought you were talking about Karina. Now we're talking about Kendra. Can you effing make up your mind? Dom says, Kenzie, you let her smoke my weed without asking. And the other weed isn't about the money. I just don't have any weed. I have no smoking weed and had to roll a backwood of the med. She says, I love how this is my fault. He says, it's not. I just feel offended. You said I'm going to need more tree because I'm going to smoke with Karina. And I gave you like all my only tree. Besides that, I just have med. Kenzie says, I will pay. Bro, I'll just get tree from someone else if this is how it's going to be. Dom says, have Kendra pay for the shake. Kenzie says, you're not about to hold that shit over my head. Dom says, that's what I care about. Kenzie says, I'm done with this effing conversation. Dom says, it's not that you have to pay. It's that I have no good tree. And I gave you the only good tree. I wish I had that tree, but I gave it to you because I want you to have it, not Karina. Kenzie says, OMG, what the F is your issue? I'm done with this combo. Literally done. Dom says, my issue is that my girlfriend doesn't get it. Kenzie says, like, what the F? Dom says, why are you mad? Kenzie says, clearly, I get it because you're being annoying AF, holding shit over my head. Dom says, no, because you keep offering to pay for the nug, but not the shake. Kenzie said, not the nug, OMG. Dom says, okay, bet. Kenzie says, bruh. Bye, she said. He says, wow. Kenzie says, I love how you wake me up by being mean. Dom says, I don't even get a thank you for the nug last night. Kenzie says, what a great way to start my day. And you def did. You were probably just being a drunk. And I remembered. Dom says, if you bought all the tree of mine you smoked, you wouldn't have money for nails, clothes, or anything. Kenzie says, come get your effing nug then. Dom says, just know that. She says, I'll just go to effing Michigan with my mom. Like, what the actual F? Okay, 2 things here. He's right. I'm tripping out. He's right about like if she paid for her own stuff, she wouldn't have money for all of it. Like she can't even keep a job as a high schooler. Not even like a part-time job. And then why is her mom thinking about moving to Michigan? Because of familial marriage problems or what? Because I never knew what's in Michigan. Do you guys know? Like, does she have family out there? I'm curious now. I'm still deep diving into the Miss Russo thing too. This is crazy. And he's right. Like I said, he's right about her spending money. She's always buying dumb shit and not being responsible. And then she wants to move in there and like live off of him. And yeah, like pay for your own stuff, Kenzie. Have your friends pay for it if you're going to be an ungrateful little girl. That's true. He shouldn't hold it over her head. It's also true. I agree with that. But like just buy your own stuff then. Oh, legally buy tree in Michigan. Oh, is that what it is? Natalie goes to a dispensary in Michigan. Ah, see the tea? See how being a little family here, we find out all the tea from each other. Mackenzie's the kind of girl no one wants for our sons to come across. I don't even want to come across her as being like friends. Hey, Jules. Hey, ray of sunshine. Okay, you guys are filling me in. Michigan is legal. Okay, I didn't know that. We have him here in Cali too. There's one like on every corner. Literally. And usually if you don't walk down the street and have everyone smelling it, it's usually rare, like when you don't. That's how much people out here smoke too. Wants him to pay for everything, but doesn't let him have 4 minutes to himself. I know. Okay, let's continue. She says, like, what the actual F? Dom says, yeah, You're gonna dry up your pockets quick. Kenzie says, I'm putting all the tree you gave me in the bag. You can come get it. Dom says, you're so unreasonable. Kenzie says, I have your wood in your shake and your nug in a bag. Dom says, I guess have thousands in weed. Don't put the wood in the bag. Kenzie says, my mom put it in the bag. Dom says, here, I'll just come right now. Kenzie says, because my whole house smells like the effing roach. Dom says, probably ash all on it. Kenzie says, LMAO, of course, that's what you care about. Dom says, yeah, of course, that's a $50 blunt. Actually, $60. Kenzie says, seems like you love to stress yourself out, huh? Like you do all this shit, then you complain about it, then don't do it. She says, you need help. Don't give me effing tree if you're going to be an effing DICK about it and hold it over my head. Dom says, you're terrible to me. Maybe I should grab the rest of the tree. Kenzie says, okay, come. Take everything. I'll get it all set up for you. He says, nah. Maybe if you run it out. She says, LMAO. He says, you want to get some Chinese and watch movies later? This is trippy how they go from like that to this. That was at 1:46 where she says LMAO. And then at 2:53, he says, you want to get Chinese and watch movies later? She said, yes. She says, I work till 9. He says, yay. Okay, bet. What Chinese? She said, China Renaissance. That one's the best. He said, where's that? That's probably the terrible one. Maybe hibachi if I can afford it. She said, it's the one that's kind of far with the good pot stickers. He said, oh, okay. I've been running around. Let me see when they all close. Kenzie says, okay, let me know. I work 4 to 9. Dom says they close at 9. Kenzie says, you could just go get it at like 8:45. He says, yeah, I might have to. Kenzie says, I'm working with a girl that dated you. That's what Kenzie said. And then Dom says, who? She probably got the wrong person. Kenzie says, nah, in 8th grade. She sends a picture of something. Dom says, who? Dom says, you're effing with me. Who is that? Kenzie says, nah, Kaylee. Dom says, Kramer? Kenzie says, I don't know. Dom says, we didn't really date. Damn, I didn't even remember that, for real. Kenzie said, I was talking about how me and my boyfriend almost broke up yesterday. She was really interested when she found out it was you. She says, mm-hmm. Dom says, well, I do now. She says, weird. He says, why, babe? She said, she kept asking about you. Dom says, why? Should I not come and get smoothie then? Kenzie says, no. Actually, yeah, come. Dom says, why, babe? Kenzie says, you wanted to. Dom says, I feel weird to come now, but I will, babe. What you want from Chinese place? Babe, the smoothie is all clogged. I got food. Be back soon. He says, what movie? She says, I'm home. He says, on the way. Then it's the next day and she's sending TikToks. He said, those are gas. She says, I need. Like for real. I need. I'm going to try to get him. He says, twin. She said, yes. He said, bet. She sends more TikToks. He says, at Disney World? He says, we need to go. He says, what are you doing, babe? At 3:26 p.m. on 6/16. She said, yes. I'm at Crocker Park with Riley. Dom says, damn, I was going to ask if I can go eat Chinese food, LMAO. Kenzie says, I'm home. He says, what are you doing? I'm grabbing stuff. She sends a TikTok. He said, that's wild. That's a big commitment, though. Kenzie says, I'd do it if I was 18. Dom says, I'll do it and you can come, LOL. She said, that's what I'm saying. Apply for it. Dom says, whole year, though, no break? Like, what about school? What about my mom? LOL. Kenzie says, I don't know. He says, LOL. Something with the TikTok. Then she sends another TikTok. He says, I'm driving. I'll watch it in a little. 10:17 p.m. He says, what are you doing, babe? He said, yeah, I said that about the birth control. It's synthetic stuff. It's not good. Kenzie said, sleep. He says, want to FaceTime for a sec? You still up? That was at 12:19 p.m. Wait. at 11:16 p.m. Oh, wait, sorry, I'm reading the wrong time. 11:16 p.m. He says, "When you gonna be off, babe?" Why does it jump like that? Oh, I'm blind. It jumps to the next day. He says, "You still up?" At 11:16 p.m. She doesn't respond. And then the next day at 9:07 p.m., he says, "When you gonna be off, babe?" He says, "I'm gonna go do studio stuff tonight, so let me know." Kenzie says, "I'm about to be off. What are you doing?" He says, "At home." He says, "Waiting for my babe." She says, "Who are you with?" He said, "Just me." She says, "Do you want to come over?" He says, "Yes." She said, Dom says, "We make steak still?" She said, "Oh shit, let me in. Let me ask." Dom says, "Let me know, because if not, I might just do studio stuff." Kenzie said, "With who?" "I need Tree." Dom says, "You haven't left yet." Oh, it jumps. So that was, she said, "I need Tree at 10 p.m." And then it jumps to 4:59 a.m. He says, "You haven't left yet." Then she sends TikToks. He says, "Damn, they put they put it in so you get addicted right now. What are you doing, babe?" He says at 1:11 p.m. She says, Open my favorite app. Don't wait to get more surprises." She sends a picture of, I think, shoes. She says, "Babe, can you please get me a pink small fondant cake?" Oh, I thought it was shoes. He says, "From where, babe?" She says, "Any bakery. You just have to call." "It's okay. I'll just do it. Never mind. I'll just figure it out at work since nobody wants to help." Dom says, "Bet, I'm heated AF right now anyways." So this is on the 18th at 4:16 p.m. He says, "Literally, first time I filled that cup, your mom got me and I left it in my car and pulled out and a car just obliterated it. So mad." Kenzie says, "OMG. No way. I'll get you another, babe." He says, "I'm so salty right now, though. I don't got coffee." I was like, "I better remember to grab this." Then I was just in a rush and didn't grab it. Kenzie says, "Do you know how many times that happens to me? I leave those cups on my car all the time. I never broke the cup though." Dom says, "Yeah, this shit had me pissed." He says, "Hey babe, how is work going?" At 6:21. She says, "It's okay. A big boss is here." Dom says, "Is he complaining about the mold? Like, when he is gone, I'll come get a smoothie." Kenzie says, "No, just making us do everything 100% right." Dom says, "You should tell him he should be worried about the mold." Kenzie says, "I don't know." Dom says, "LOL. Is he staying there the whole time?" Kenzie says, "Hopefully not. It's effed." Dom says, "Why is he making it so hard?" Kenzie says, "Because we can't do shit how we normally do. We have to do it the right way." Dom said, "What is even the difference?" She said, "Come whenever." They left. Dom said, "Okay, be there soon." At 10:07, she says, "I'm home, babe." He said, "What's the move, babe?" She says, "I'm with Riley." He said, "Oh, okay." She said, "I said you could come, babe." He says, "What are you trying to do? Because I don't know if I could go to bed early." Kenzie says, "I have anxiety about tomorrow, so I'm probably not going to sleep very much tonight." Dom says, "LOL, you're cute." Kenzie says, "Babe." He says, "What?" She sends a little kissy face. She sends another kissy face or crying face or whatever, little heart face. And then he sends a screenshot of her. Dom said, Kenzie says, "You look so cute." Dom says, "You look cuter." Kenzie says, "My family just went to dinner without me." And it's literally 10:30 p.m. Dom, Dom says, "Damn, you got a friend over though?" Kenzie says, "I know, but still, she would still bring us both. She should still bring us both. Weird." Dom said, "That is weird." "Did they leave before you got home?" Kenzie says, "No, they left while I was here." Dom says, "Maybe they didn't want to pay for Riley." Kenzie says, "I don't know." She sends a screenshot of herself, like a selfie. Dom says, "You look cute." At 11:06 p.m. He says, "I might have to come cuddle." She says, "Babe." He says, "What, babe?" She sends TikToks. He says, "Yeah, that that's red, LOL." She sends a picture of another selfie. He says, "What are you doing?" At midnight, she sends another selfie of herself. She sends another selfie. Okay. She, he says, "How is your photo shoot, babe?" Then it goes to the next day on the 19th at 1:16 because she has a photo shoot. Hey, Moonchild. They both have serious attachment issues, like the trauma bonded. Same. I missed you. My love. His cousin went with Ken's to that Halloween party. Yeah, I'm thinking bulimia or something. Kenzie's obsessed with food. Hmm. Hey, TS is so selfish, says Austin. He said, how was your photo shoot, babe? D- Dom says, you don't need to talk to. Whoa. Okay. He says, how was your photo shoot at midday? 12:04 in the afternoon. Then he says, you don't need to talk to me like I'm RETARDED. He says, sorry, I can't hear you. Your phone is messed up or something. So they must have called each other. He says, can I drop to Joey real quick, then come? Kenzie says, hurry the F up. Dom says, okay, I'll just come to you right now and go to them later. Kenzie says, no, just go and do it real quick. It's not up to me, babe. Just go do it. Dom says, no, it's okay, babe. Kenzie says, bring the pen down. Dom says, what are my crystals called again? She said, tigers, opal eye, and rose quartz. He says, yeah, I always forget. Kenzie says, Mr. Davenport pissed me off so bad. Oh, this jumps to the next day at 11:43 a.m. She says, I was taking a final and he was just sitting right by watching. Dom says, aren't they supposed to? I would have just asked him to leave. Kenzie says, no, they didn't watch Karina. That's why it pissed me off so bad. And Karina was obviously cheating. We both were. She says, Dom says, next time, just ask him to leave. She said, we just started talking in Kearney and then he left. Oh, that's the language that she talks. She called it, oh, Carney. She spelt it wrong and then she's fixed it. We just started talking in Carney. So it is Carney. People were saying, like, well, I don't know if gibberish is the same, but people were like, no, it's not Carney, but she just called it Carney herself. Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah. Okay, let me go back. She said Carney. She says, "Are you coming to visit me today at 1:19 p.m.?" She said, "Bring the pen thingy." He said, "Yeah, what time's work?" She says, 11 to 4. He says, "Oh, so you already been there?" "Yeah, let me run some places and I'll be there." She said, "Bet." She said, "Yay." He said, "Babe," at 1:51. He says, "Babe, I'm not home and I didn't bring the pen. Would you care if I didn't bring it?" Kenzie says, "No, of course I don't care." He says, "You back from work yet, babe?" She said, "Yes, babe," at 4:31 p.m. She said, "Let's do something fun today." He said, "What do you want to do? It's super windy and rainy." She said, "I don't know. We can do something fun indoor." He says, "Yeah, let's go figure out what to do. I'll figure out when I'm done with stuff." She said, "When are you going to be done?" He said, "Right now I'm done just at the house eating food." Kenzie says, "Me too." Dom says, "I'm gonna see what else I can do, then I'm free." She said, "Okay, bet. Be at my house at 7:59." Dom says, "I'll be there earlier." Probably. Kenzie says, bet. Even better. She says the next day, in the middle of the day, she says, I'm hungry. Do you want to eat? So now on the 22nd. She says, do you want to go to Fridays at 5 or 6? Dom, I heard stock might crash. He says, what stock? He said, and where did you hear it? She said, I don't know what stock. Karina heard it from her mom, and her parents are rich AF. Karina said they're in the politics and the stock market. Dom said, if it crashes, it only helps me. The media will push whatever's happening. Kenzie said, oh, okay, good. Dom said, LOL, what should I wear today? I was going to wear those pink pants, but I don't know what shirt or what sweatshirt to wear them with. Kenzie says, wear a white shirt with the pink. Dom says, well, I know that, babe. What jacket? And you said Fridays at 5 or 6? She said, I don't know. What time do you think is better to go? I think we're going to go at 6. Dom said, I don't know who we going with and let me see what I have to do. Kenzie says, I don't know. Dom says, let me know, babe. Kenzie says, do you want to go to Fridays at 6:45 when my mom is off? She said she will come. And then she sends TikToks. More TikToks, Google searches. Dom says, in Hocking Hills too? Let's get a cabin. She says, I'm down. Are we going to just me and you? I don't even know who we would bring. Everyone sucks. Dom says, I know, it does suck. We're the only cool people. Kenzie said, I know, we're so raw. Dom says, yeah, and you're super cute. Kenzie said, is Blair also coming to dinner? She says, I told you 6:45. I mean, I don't care. I was just gonna make you gonna be ready. Dom says, no, I'm too worked up to do anything. Okay, so she says, I mean, I don't care. I just want to make sure you're gonna be ready. That was at 6:32. And then at 11:19, he says, no, I'm too worked up to do anything. Kenzie says, okay, cool, I'm going to bed. Dom says, I wish I could just go to bed right now. He says, you still here, babe? He says, sorry we fought, babe. Love you. So they must have fought after dinner. Then it goes to the next day at 11:07. He says, sorry we fought, babe. Love you. Do you still want to come sleep over? Oh, wait. Oh, no, it's the same. I thought it was the next day, but it's not. He says, you still here, babe? At 11:26. He said, sorry we fought, babe. Love you. He says, do you still want to come sleep over? Now it's 12:43 a.m. in the morning. He said, and then it jumps, she doesn't respond. She's probably sleeping. And then he says at 11:07, I'm salty. I'm trying to go next door and get my firearms, but Toph is over there. Kenzie says, why the F is he still there? I for real hate him. Dom says, I know. He's such a weirdo. Dom says, I'm glad you hate him with me. What is like the real truth about that relationship? Why does he hate his own brother so much? I mean, I know bits and pieces, but I want to know like the truth. Like, what is the real truth? His brother is mentally not well. Why does he hate him so much? Hey, Brian. Hey, Kayla. Hey, Heather. She don't know shit about the stock market. No, she don't. I know. I just know what's significant. He hates Chris. I know. Okay, let's move on. He says, I'm glad you hate him with me. He says, and I broke my coffee pot. Kenzie says, oh God, how, babe? I'll get you one. He says, I was washing it and bumped it into a cup and it just cracked a hole in it. Kenzie says, I'm off at 4:05 p.m. He says, I'm shooting with Jared. He says, you gonna hang with Riley? Babe? She says, hi, babe. Yes. I don't have any. Oh, he said, then she says, I don't have any, weirdo. He says, question mark, you don't have any what? Kenzie says, bud. Dom says, oh, I'll get you some. She said, can you bring the little cake molds too? She said, are you still with your friend or something? Dom says, I'm home. You can come get Bud if you want. She said, you were supposed to drop off the cake things when you were home, but it's whatever. Clearly, you've just been chilling. He says, no, I just got home. I'm getting ready to go run places. And it's 9:08 p.m. He says, and I thought you didn't need them because you just made the cake. Kenzie says, okay. He says, what are you doing, babe? She says, then it jumps to the next morning. Kenzie says at 10:31 in the morning, can I get some Bud after school? He says, yeah. Door is locked. Give me a sec. I'm on the toilet. She says, hurry, babe. I seriously have to pee. What window can I go in? I didn't know it was that hard to say, I promise. Dom says, honestly, I didn't even know what you said. I thought you were just telling me to come over. Kenzie said, I just said, promise you'll come over after because you didn't last night. That's all, babe. Dom said, oh, I didn't hear the promise. Kenzie said, babe, do you want to go to the beach? Dom said, with who and when? She says, right now. Soon. He says, well, I didn't shower, so I guess not. She said, oh, okay. He said, what time are you going? She said, I'm not going. He said, are you going because the Ohio Party Act? Kenzie says, I'll probably just stay here if you don't go. She said, yes. Dom said, let me run somewhere and shower. We could probably go. Kenzie says, I want to wear my 2 new swimsuits, and they're not really tanning swimsuits. Dom said, which ones? She said, my paper one, and I am G, a pink one. Bape. She said, Nat and Hope coming. He said, are you cool with them or no? She said, yeah. I'm saying we're all going together. Dom says, oh, okay. Let me see what I gotta sell, then we can go. She said, okay, bet. He said, probably just this one sell real quick, then I'll shower. Kenzie said, honestly, there's no point of showering. You're just gonna go to the dirty ass beach. He says, my hair is effed though. She says, well, you could just wash your hair only. She says, I don't know how I feel. I feel like your hair's still going to get effed up too. Dom says, that's the longest part of showering. Well, I can make it look good to get effed up again. She said, LOL. He said, right though. She said, just hurry, you little nugget. He said, like it greasy. He says, I'm waiting to go to this sale. Should I just wear them pink swim trunks? She said, yes. LOL. She said, we can twin. She said, bring your blue ones too. Just bring both. I didn't know which ones I'm gonna wear. He says, I don't have blue ones. She said, okay, then I'll wear the pink swimsuit. How far is your sale? She says, LOL, call me. And can you give me a time limit? I'm gonna pick them up now. Dom says, okay, I just got out the shower. She says, okay, be ready. Get some towels. He says, I don't have towels. I have bath towels, LMAO. She says, just be ready then, LOL. She says, Nuggy. He says, do I bring rugs? He says, when you gonna be here? She said, soon. She said, and I'm down. Kenzie says, I might have to stop at my house and grab some. He says, what should I bring? She said, whatever and bud. She says, I'm coming. He says, I got these muscle relaxers. Should I bring those? Wow, Dom was like really into pills. Twinning. I'm still on. Oh, I'll say, and I'll have to show you. Them always matching kills me. Yucky. Yeah, they're the tanning ones, like the ones you put on just to tan, like with like the liquid tan, I think. Dom needed help. I know, you guys. He said, I got these muscle relaxers. Should I bring those? She said, LOL. Yeah, sure. He said, bet. He says, where are you coming from? She said, here in 5 seconds. He said, bet. She said, here, bring water. He said, okay. He says, pull up around back and you can turn around. She said, watch the fat Asian. He said, I am. She said, she's going to steal something or try to fight with someone. We will retaliate. Dom says, she ain't doing nothing right now. When you're going to be back, I'm trying to piss. Kenzie says, come whenever. He says, bet. She says, I don't feel good. I puked. Wait, what? What is she talking about, the Asian? Oh, it jumped to the next day. So she was probably at work. He said, when you going to be back? I'm trying to piss. Sorry, guys. Then it jumps to the next day at 4:47 p.m. She says, come whenever. He says, bet. She says, I don't feel good. I puked. She said, Dom. He said, is there anything I can do, babe? She says, I don't know. He says, do you really want me to come back? She said, no. Are we still going to that concert? Because it low-key looks like country music and I'm not into that. Dom says, I'll ask Blair if it's good. She said, question mark, question mark. He said, what? She said, Dom says, he didn't answer yet. I'll call him. Kenzie says, do you want to go or not? Dom says, oh, he said he didn't get there yet. I'll go if it's fun. I mean, it's something to do. He said it's a chill beach where you can do whatever. Kenzie says, I mean, I feel like I'm just going to stand there. And isn't it raining? Dom says, I guess not anymore. I'll check whether it is. I'll check the weather of where it's at. I'll ask Blair if it's mid. He'll be honest. He'll be there in 10 anyways. Kenzie says, I don't know. I literally feel like shit, so I might just go to bed. It's 9:46 p.m. She says, if it's fun, I'll def go though. He says, what can we do for you, babe? When did you start feeling like shit? Is it because you haven't ate? She said, pretty much my back just started burning like super bad, like I told you. Then it got really bad and literally nothing was making the pain go away. And then all of a sudden I just threw up. Dom says, I used to have the burning. You got to stretch your butt hella. He says, come stretch with me. She says, come over. He says, okay, give me a sec, babe. He said, give me a sec, babe. That was at 9:52. And then at 12:14 in the morning, well, in the middle of the night, he says, you're being mean to me. Then I say you're being mean. Then I'm the mean one for saying you're being mean. Makes a lot of sense. I literally didn't go to breakfast because I wanted to stay with you. Oh, so it must be the next day in the middle of the day. He says, I literally didn't go to breakfast because I wanted to stay with you. Then you're just mean and make breakfast without me. Oh, okay. So Now it's the next morning. He says, all because I asked a question about tying the straps. 6:26, 12:22 p.m. He says, I guess I just won't ask questions next time. Sorry, I didn't know that would make you mad. I won't ask any more questions. He said, to be honest, that's the definition of petty. Kenzie says, listen, you saying you don't know how to tie the shirt. Dom says, question mark, that shouldn't be a big deal. Kenzie said, it's not. Dom says, then why did you get so mad over it when I said you're mean? He copies her text message. He says, quote unquote, making things, events, or actions normal, people dismiss as trivial or insignificant. He's defining petty person. Definition of petty person is making things, events, or actions normal, people dismiss as trivial or significant into excuses to be upset, uncooperative, childish, or stubborn. Dom sends a screenshot and then he said, okay, so basically he's defining what a petty person is to Mackenzie. She doesn't respond. And then he says, my dad is such a piece of trash. Then she says, no one's home. Dom said, you hungry? I'm hungry. Want to get food? Kenzie says, yes. Dom says, what we get? Chinese? She said, I don't care. He says, I want that or like some gas fries. He said, we should go to 𝐷𝐸𝐸𝐿 fair tonight. Kenzie says, yes, I'm down. He said, bet. He says, are you home at 6:01 p.m.? Kenzie said, I heard it wasn't that good though. Yeah. He says, what's not good about it? Kenzie says, you know, I'm still down. I don't know. He says, I'm at your house. She said, where? And that was at 6:02 p.m. And then it jumps to 27. He says at 4:15 or 5:14. He says, it's late, so I'm sleeping here. I really do miss you though, babe. How is work, babe? Wait, so he ended up going somewhere? He says, I really miss you though, babe, at 2:55 a.m. She doesn't respond. And then it goes to 11:37 a.m. And he says, how is work, babe? I passed the fair. It doesn't look bad. I'd be down to go tonight. She says, please, can we go tonight? Me, you, and Riley. Dom says, yeah, what time does it end? I have a play planned at 7, so sometime after that. Kenzie says, why are you asking? I don't know. I'm going after work with Riley. You can come meet me there if you have a sale. Dom says, okay. She says, can you do the sale before 5? Do the sale before 5. He says, I can't. He's at Cedar Point. He said 7. Kenzie says, bruh, WTF. I didn't want to have to wait on some FAG. Dom says, he needs a good amount and I blew him off yesterday. I'm making 200, so I'm trying to do it. Kenzie says, can't you just have someone else do it? Why does that RETARD have to be at Cedar Point? Dom says, I really don't have anyone around there. I don't know, man. 7 is fine though. It's probably closes at 12. And I'd rather be there when it's darker than when it's hot outside. She says, I know, but I don't want to be there for a long time. Are you cool with Riley going too? He says, yeah, I don't care. She said, Nat is pissing me off so bad. He says, why, babe? She said, about her stupid cheap ass bag. Dom says, why is that your problem? Kenzie says, bruh, because she left it in my car and she's claiming that it's in my car, even though she searched it like 80 times. And even though we checked the camera footage of my Ring camera, she keeps saying her mom is mad as F. Like, I don't give an F. Dom says, that's fried. She probably just left it at the beach. Kenzie said, I know, she's pissing me the F off. And she sends all of these screenshots of them texting, her and her friend. She says, are you coming? Are you coming in? Wait, let me see when she was sending that. He was sending those texts. Yeah, 6:27. She says, are you coming? Are you coming in? If you are, can you go to my house and bring me one of the 10 things so I can hit it? He says, what 10 things? What do you get off? When do you get off? I'm about to shower. She says, the pen. She says, 5. He said, okay, bet. Yeah, I got you. She said, babe, at 3:01. He says, what's up, babe? She says, what are you going to come bring me a hit? He says, I'm about to shower real quick. I'll come after. He says, sorry, I decided to work out. She said, oh, wow. Probably just don't come because I have to start closing at 4. She said, not wow. She said, I meant oh. He said, oh, I thought you get off at 5. She said, I do. I have to start cleaning and shit though. Just come quick if you're going to come before 5. He says, okay, give me a sec. She said, never mind. He said, okay. She says, I'm home. I want to go to the carnival. He says, it's going to be raining for a bit and I'm about to run places. He said, what are you doing at 7:05 p.m.? Dom says, did you go to the carnival? She says, no, I'm just laying here waiting for you. He says, what you've been doing? Oh, okay. I was wondering why you weren't answering. Kenzie says, do you want to go? When are we going to go? Question mark, question mark. And then she sends Skims clothes again. She says, where are you? He says, on the way home. He says, getting highway by Snow Road, like 20 minutes till I'm home. She says, come. She says, babe, this is at 11:58. He says, I will. I'll be home as soon, like less than 10. That was at 1 a.m. No, midnight. And then it goes to the next day. She's so needy. She needs her mouth washed out with soap, says Cree. It's really hard to sort out those mental issues causing the choice to cover up the rugs. I'm so over the question mark, Valerie. Okay, he says, should we just go explore? Okay, so it jumps to the next day at 1:42 p.m. on the 28th. He says, should we just go explore Metro Parks today? He says, I wish I had my four-wheeler going. We could ride. She said, I'm down. I want to go somewhere cool, though. He says, yeah, probably too hot for abandoned building. I was hot in my car with the AC, but Metro Parks would be perfect. She said, okay, bet. She said, hurry. I'm so hungry. She said, bruh, where are you? He says, about to be on the way. I had to get these edibles out. You can make it without me if you're that hungry. She says, WTF? Question mark, question mark. He says, brushing my teeth, about to be on the way, babe. She sends a Google searches. She says, more question marks. She says, how long? It's 8:02 p.m. She says, I'm really trying to go to my house. He says, 5 minutes or less. He said, my stomach really hurts. I already shit twice. I might go again. You can take my car if you really want. Yeah, I'm gonna be longer than 5. Kenzie says, my mom is just going to get me to come over when you're done. Dom says, okay. He says, are we having fire, babe? You want to go get marshmallows and stuff? She said, yes. He says, okay, babe. Oh, so it jumps to the next day, the next morning at 11 a.m. He says, okay, babe. He says, I'll be on the way in a sec. She said, did you leave? Leave me some of, he says, no, not yet. What are you doing? She says, come. He says, I'm not even home yet to shower. She says, do you want to go shopping today since it's shitty out? Or we can go out to eat. He says, maybe. I'm not in the best mood. She said, why, babe? Do you want to watch movies and have a cuddle night? He says, I don't know. Some days you just aren't going to be in the best mood, and there's nothing wrong with that. Kenzie said, that's true. I love you, babe, at 3:58 p.m. He says, love you too, babe. She says, do you want to go crystal mining tomorrow? He says, probably. He says, what are you doing now? She says, with Lincoln. He says, I might have to go run to Elyria. Then I'm free after, though. She says, I'm getting my fondant cake at like 5:40. Then we're going to Olive Garden. Do you want to come? He says, yes, which Olive Garden and with who? She says, what do you mean which Olive Garden? The only one. What do you mean with who? The person I just told you I was with. Then she sends 10 question marks. He says, okay, I'll probably be busy then. She says, WTF? Okay. He says, because I'm going to run to Elyria. I don't know if I'm saying that right. He says, I was just asking which Olive Garden, so maybe I can tell the person to meet me there. She says, oh, LOL. He says, I accept your apology. That kid hasn't hit me back, so I'm free now. Probably just some breadsticks and calamari. She said, LOL, bet. She said, to be honest, last time I had the calamari, it wasn't good. He said, get me mott sticks then, and just make sure I get extra sauce. She said, bet. He says, if they give you soup with your meal, get Toscana and take it home for me. She says, question mark, question mark. Are you coming to get your food at 8:05 p.m.? He says, I'm coming. She says, babe, the next morning at 9:39 a.m. She says, babe, do you want to go shopping or to the crystal mine today? And then she sends Google searches of the mines, more Google searches of the mines. She says, I say the second one. And then she sends more pictures and Google links. He sends something, picture of something. He says, what are you doing, babe? He says, are you back from your facial yet? She said, I'm at my facial right now at 3:03 p.m. He says, oh, okay. He says, I was going to see if you wanted to go to the dispo. She says, I'm done with my facial now. He says, you want to come with me? I just got to stop at Phil's and get gas. She says, I might go pick up that one girl I was telling you about. Dom said, okay, then. She says, do you want to go to the abandoned building? He said, it's pretty raining. She said, well, I kind of want to do something fun. He sends a screenshot of the weather. He said, it's going to rain bad though. Kenzie says, oh, so we're just going to do nothing? He says, what do you have in mind? She said, I had a couple things in mind, but you said no to like all of them. Dom says, even you said we can't just go to that crystal mine. You know what? Let's just go to the beach. After 6, though, because I have sales. He says, LOL, exactly. Pain in the ass. Kenzie says, I'm on the way home. He says, bet. At 4:57, he says, I'm about to run and get gas and go to Illyria. She says, where you at? At 5:30. He said, at the dispo. She said, want to go to Dave and Buster's? She said, Dom. He said, what's up? She said, when are you coming over? He said, I'm about to meet this kid in like 10 minutes. When do you need me to come by? She said, just come soon. He said, because I got like 3 other plans to run after. She says, what are you doing at 6:36? And where are you? He says, leaving play. She says, are you about to be done? He says, I got a couple more, but I could probably tell them tomorrow. She says, let me know. Dom says, okay, give me a sec. At 7:25 p.m., he says, I'm like done. She said, question mark, then come. He said, on the way. And then she sends a pair of shoes. She's sending a bunch of pairs of shoes, Jordans, Nikes. Okay, she's just sending links to shoes that she wants. She says, pancakes or waffles at 9:03 p.m. He says, waffles. She said, so we are at Denny's now. He said, LMAO, why? She said, we're dead ass sat there for like 30 minutes and nobody gave us even a drink, so now we're here. Dom says, damn, WTF. At 11:10, he says, what are you doing now? She says, I'm home, babe. He says, okay, I'll come soon, babe. He says, okay, I'll come. Okay, that's where June ends. Okay. She says, I'm home, babe, at midnight. Wow, we finished June. Wasn't very long. 20 minutes from Cedar Point. Okay, so let me write this down where we are. Nobody waited on her. I have questions about this Dom thing with his family and her stuff too. Let me see what page we ended on. Oh my gosh. Okay. So we're going to start July tomorrow. I do plan to be live tomorrow. I know I didn't go live last night, but I do plan to be live tomorrow. I might even be live after this. I might do another live. So if it's raining, why go to the beach? They're nuts. So she said it's all Dom's fault that they broke into the church. Yes. I'm gonna post a video of that. All these clothes, trainers, and bags Dom bought her will all be vintage when she gets out. She'll probably sell them all to fund herself. If she gets out, remember, it's 15 to life with the possibility of parole, but that's if they give it to her. They could always say no. Let's go kick some rocks. Yay. I love David. Yeah, dispo is dispensary. You better be live. Yes, I will be live tomorrow, and I will be live after this. I'm going to do another one because it's early. After dark. Yeah, I'm thinking like a hangout after dark. If not, I'm going to do another true crime one of the two. But even if it's just a hangout, I'll probably be back because it's early here my time. But I don't want to start July because July might be long. So please hit that like button on the way out and turn on your notification in case I go live because you never know what you're going to get here. True crime, dancing, Coffee, I mean, we're all sorts of crazy around here. Thank you, Amy, and thank you for becoming a member. You're the best, Melly. Love me some Melly. I love you guys too. Thank you, babelets, for being here. Make sure you hit the like button, and I will see you on the next one. And shout out to all my moms. Bye.
Dark hair shining in the Cali sun. Really on the case, so no point in trying to run. Your sons can ask for feet pics, but you getting none. It's from o'clock with Melly, let's have some fucking fun. Some try to hide away, so all they do is work. But nobody can hide when she gets a hold of that paperwork. So don't you dare come in here acting like a jerk. Dance might make her dance, but Newport docs will make her wanna twerk. Dark hair shining in the Cali sun. Melly on the case, so no point in trying to run. You Sims can ask for feet pics, but you getting none. It's crime o'clock with Melly, let's have some fucking fun. So if you're feeling for true crime, like it's a drug, Crime o'clock with Melly is your motherfucking plug. Going so hard on criminals, they'll call their mama for a hug. She's finding out all the stuff they try to sweep under the rug. Dark hair shining in the Cali sun. Melly on the case, so no point in trying to run. You Sims can ask for feet